The Senate has approved for the second reading a bill for the amendment of the 2024 Appropriation Act as President Bola Tinubu seeks additional 6.2 trillion naira to fund the budget. The president's request for the additional sum of 6.2 trillion naira will increase the size of the 2024 budget from 27.5 trillion naira to 33.7 trillion naira if approved. In a letter read by Senate President Godswill Akpabio, the president explained that the Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2024 aims to allocate 3.2 trillion naira for infrastructure projects, including renewed hope initiatives, and 3 trillion naira for recurrent expenditure. The president also seeks to amend the Finance Act of 2023 to impose a one-time windfall tax on foreign exchange gains realized by banks in 2023, adding that the tax will fund capital infrastructure development, education, healthcare, and other public welfare initiatives. The two amendment bills were granted accelerated hearing and passed for second reading at a debate on their general principles.
The Appropriation Act Amendment Bill 2024 seeks to amend the Principal Act to provide the sum of 3 trillion 200 billion only for renewed hope infrastructure projects and other critical infrastructure projects to be undertaken across the country, and the sum of 3 trillion only to meet further recurrent expenditure requirements necessary for the proper operation of the federal government, expenditure which are to be funded by expected revenues accruing to the federal government of Nigeria.
We expected this, Rufai. We had known that this was coming, and now 6.2 trillion naira being asked. Your take on the story?
Okay. 6.2 trillion. So that means the deficit is about 14 trillion from this cycle. Also, there's been lots of conversation. I think it was a budget I was talking about running other budgets also pari passu. So what's the conversation about that? Because the response from the government side was not, solid enough. You have a lot of this budget running. The question is, what's the effect? We just have a very top line of recurrence because the cost of governance itself is very high. And when I saw part of the recurrent, about 3 trillion, I'm asking, is it also part of the money they're going to use to buy his jet for him and his vice president's jets? Hitherto, we have seen the immense waste that goes on in this government. Till today, most of the waste has not been accounted for. Most of a lot of the frivolous spending. So I think it's also best for President Tinubu also to really, tighten his belt too by showing Nigerians that he's really realistic about this, talk about tightening his belt. And that's why all the governors are complaining. Look at the PDP governors. He's failed. That's what they're saying. And when people from his own party like Aliu Ndume, which I might not agree with, but I give my full support to this morning, for saying the things he said, that, things are not well, and the next day remove him as chief whip. So we've increased the deficit to what expense? How are they going to fund some of this? They said, they are going to go to the banks as a windfall tax. It pretty much reminds me of the UK when the energy companies had a windfall tax also because of energy prices. They are taking from the banks as regards that. But taking from the banks, how is this money going to go in reinvestment into the economy? I mean, you are talking about public works, healthcare, and all of that. What are the specificity of these projects? And how are we going to ensure that it's not just going to be another wide relevant project, that nothing comes out of it? Secondly, the part I have a problem with, I know for the sake of health, we need to cut sugar, but the tax on sugar is going to destroy this country. The beverage sector employs a lot of people. They are dealing with a lot of production costs and increase in electricity tariff that just went up. A very prominent hotel in Lagos, I hear their bill was over 200 million. Some mid-sized hotel owner was talking to me yesterday. He said his bill is over 30 million now in electricity. The beverage companies are dealing with this. You still want to put a sugar tax on top of it. They had muted this idea before. They pushed back. Because the first thing these companies will do is workers will have to go. I think Mr. Wale Edun should think critically about this beverage tax they now want to put in. I know we are in that shape, we need to look for money, but that also means we should also cut our coat according to our cloth.
Dr. Bati?
Okay. At the beginning of this administration, we were told specifically that the problem was revenue, not necessarily tax or GDP to debt ratio. And you'll find a coordinating minister of the economy in the person of Wale Edun, trying all he can to fulfill that objective of saying, okay, how do we raise revenue in a way that we don't impose hardship on the ordinary people of Nigeria? And hence, you have all of these measures coming in. In this latest proposal of trying to raise 6.2 trillion naira, bringing the 2024 appropriation budget to 33.7 billion. They have now proposed that 3 trillion naira should be withdrawn from the consolidated revenue. Now, what the government is doing, we have to see it against the background of the recent protests over the fact that since this administration came into power, they've been asking for more money, more amendments. In fact, I think it was Waziri Adio who wrote a piece, commenting on what was in the public domain, that this administration was implementing 4 budgets simultaneously. One senator brought up the issue and it was suspended, when he said we were operating more than one budget, but later it became a big issue. Where are we with that? How many budgets are we implementing? Because the 2023 budget, there was a variation on it, an amendment. There was another amendment. There was now another amendment on 2024 budget. Now there is this amendment on the 2024 budget, appropriation bill as it is called again. 4 different budgets at the same time. Waziri Adio's argument when he wrote that piece is that it creates confusion and it raises very poignant questions about transparency and accountability. That's about the additional money that they are trying to raise. Ordinary Nigerian civil society, I won't be surprised if SERAP comes up and says, well, all the additional amendments that you have been getting, what have you done with it? And SERAP will go and file a freedom of information request, appropriately, and even go to court subsequently to seek clarification on what government is doing. That's number one. On the fiscal side, they have now said they are going to introduce a bank's windfall tax. On the surface of it, you may well say, yes, the banks are making humongous profits. We have said it on this table, that why are the banks making profit when every Nigerian is growing lean? My stomach, for example, which used to bulge, has reduced because of this widespread epidemic of empty pockets. I've grown leaner. And so it is with other people. People who don't even have as much protoplasm as Ruben Abati. They've also grown leaner. So why is it that the banks are growing fat at this time? So there will be many that will see from that side, but there will be many also who will say that this is controversial. As Senator Seriake Dixon pointed out yesterday, that this could be a very controversial proposal, taxing the banks. If you are taxing the banks, are you also taxing the oil companies? As they did at a point last year in Britain. The second tax that they have introduced is what they call beverages tax, which is sugar. I think sugar tax, simply. Yeah, there's a sugar reduction coalition in Nigeria. And they have been arguing that diabetes is a major problem in Nigeria. It's not only in Nigeria that diabetes is a problem. It's a problem all over the world. And in England, I cite England again, they are trying to deal with obesity. So if the Nigerian government says we're going to do sugar tax, okay, what are the implications for the business? For people who are involved in the beverages business, who are already complaining as members of the Manufacturers Association of Nigeria, that we do not have an enabling environment. The way to control diabetes, is it through sugar tax, or is it through lifestyle adjustment, public education, telling people that if you consume too much sugar, you will pay for it at some point later, depending on your DNA composition. So again, to use Waziri Adio's word, confusion in terms of what is being proposed. But finally, this is a Senate, this is a House of Reps that are led by people who began their career by saying that anything President Tinubu brings to this National Assembly will be approved. So we should not waste additional saliva. The National Assembly is going to approve everything because it's a rubber stamp assembly. And they say that they are very loyal to President Tinubu. And they say this is all about renewed hope. We're still waiting for hope to materialize.
All right, so let me start with the the SSB tax. So that's the sugar-sweetened beverage tax. It's not the first time, and that's why the word reintroduction is being used. In 2021, it was introduced at the time, but the persuasion for that was so that there would be able, it was more health reasons, as a way of discouraging the consumption of sugar, sweetened beverages in order to tackle the attendant diseases like obesity, diabetes, and other conditions like that. At the time, it was still as controversial as now, but what the difference, or at least what made sense, was that the monies that would have been realized from the tax was 10 naira for every liter of the beverage would be used or channeled into investment in healthcare. And of course, some of the things that came out from there was that, number one, the amount was too small to be a deterrent to a number of people with regards to opting for sugar-sweetened beverage. Number two was the earmarking of that fund towards healthcare and to ensure that the money, or the reason why, that area would be almost swing funded in such a way that the money realized from the tax would go towards funding healthcare and to better build infrastructure in the healthcare. And of course, number three, that there would be other things that need to happen for us to really address the challenges that come from health challenges from drinking sugary beverages. At the moment, what the challenge is that the sugar-sweetened beverage currently are already on the high side. How many people are drinking sugar-sweetened beverage? People can't even afford to drink it at the moment. So whether the tax is on or not, prices are already high, so it has reduced. Now let us then see if that has had any impact in terms of the lifestyle choices, or if people have been forced to take alternatives that are possibly even worse for their health, not because of the consideration of health, but because of the fact that things are just expensive. And again, looking at the impact on the companies, because we talk about the fact of high taxes, the state of the economy, the enabling business or not environment for companies like this, and how it affects jobs and livelihoods of Nigerians. To be honest, at this point, I know the government is trying to raise revenue through different means, different ways, borrowing one of it. Yesterday, we had a full conversation on the effect of what we seem to be approaching in terms of a debt crisis and how that would ultimately affect the economy. But we have to also be careful so that in trying to raise revenue, we're not killing the economy. We're not killing job providers. We're not killing the sources of income for many Nigerians. We're not killing businesses in Nigeria. So whilst I can understand and make a case for the health benefit of an introduction or reintroduction of the sugar-sweetened beverage, it's also important to look at it. Is it a good time now when businesses need more support, when businesses need more, more encouragement and push and injection by the government to ensure that they're able to thrive and survive in this very difficult economy? So those are some of the considerations for me this morning.